So in front of us is the evolution of the GJ Locks electric pick gun. This was the Mk4, serial number 007, which then became the Mk2, and this was serial number 497, and there were quite a few improvements made between these models. I don't have a Mk3, but now we have the Mk4, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So inside the Mk4, the old pick guns used to come in plastic tubes. They now come in this very nice zip-up case, which keeps everything contained. Within the zip-up case, you will find a USB-C charging lead. And USB-C is a much stronger plug and method for putting the charge into your pick gun. You'll find a little box, and inside the little box, we've got pick gun blades, and also there'll be a little Allen key wrench to be able to fit the pick blades to the machine. As a set of instructions, which I would thoroughly recommend that you read, because inside these instructions you will find charging instructions. You'll also get some usage hints on here that give you some idea, and also what to do in the event of your pick gun developing a fault and where you need to send it. And then here we've actually got the pick gun itself, so let's take this out and have a look at what we've got. And here you can see is the Mk4. This is serial number 795. We've still got a removable plastic shield here, which protects the button for operating the pick gun. So you can rotate that round and operate the pick gun, or you can take it off, and then when you're finished, I thoroughly recommend that you rotate that back round, because when you pop that in your bag, if you leave it like this, the chances are next time you take the pick gun out, it will be the battery will be flat. On the back here is your USB-C charging port, and one of the first things I would recommend you do is fully charge this. So plug it in, don't leave it unsupervised, but plug it in, give it about 3 hours. You will see a red light when the pick gun is being charged, and then the red light will go green when it's fully charged. And the one thing that's been common across all of these pick guns is the battery capacity inside these is enormous. They last for months and months on a single charge, even if you use it on a daily basis like I do on warrants. So fantastic battery life inside here. If we look on the front of the pick gun, you can see that there's a knurled knob there with a spring underneath it, and that knurled knob is there to set the throw on the actual pick gun. So in other words, how much the pick gun is vibrating up and down. And in previous editions there was a lock screw. That's been done away with now, because the spring tension and the handy knob on the top there allow you to set that really quickly and efficiently while you're using the tool. So let's put a pick blade into here. If we undo this little Allen screw here, we don't need to take it all the way off, just loosen it so that you get a gap. There's a little plate there that moves away and acts as a clamp for the actual pick blade. If we get a pick blade out, now I like to put the pick blades in so that they're basically, you can see that they're shaped, and I always like to put the shape this way round, so that when you're actually operating this within the lock, you have this sort of cutout here underneath. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. Some people have it the other way around, whatever suits you, but this is the way I do it, and it seems to work okay for me. So let's tighten that up. Now obviously this is a screw, and it's got a washer behind there that when you tighten that up, holds everything in place. So you don't need to over tighten that, but you do need to make sure it's tight enough that it doesn't vibrate loose when it comes on the door. And over time, you'll understand how tight to make that. Right, so when we're using it, we'll rotate that round. It's fully charged, and we can change the throw. So if I do the screw, you can see this is moving this arm downwards, and now there's no bounce on that whatsoever. And then as I move it up, we can introduce a little bit of bounce. So that's a very small amount. Getting more, and then we can really have a massive amount of throw on there. So what is the right amount for the lock? If you are obviously bouncing up and down greater than the depth of the keyway, then you're going to be flexing this pick blade many times a second, and it will snap pretty quickly. So start with the bounce at a lowish level, and if you feel like you need to increase it, then obviously back it off a bit. It's very easy to do. And sometimes you'll find that if you start at a gentle level of bounce and you're not getting the lock, just by turning this a little bit and increasing the bounce, or going the other way, you'll find that you change the frequency and the amount of push that you're vibrating the pins, and obviously that'll get the open. So how does this actually work, and what's the best way of using it? Well, I mean, Newton's third law is for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. A little bit like Newton's cradle, where you have a series of spheres hanging on strings. When you release one, the force is transferred through the pack of balls, and it'll push the other one out on the end. This is pretty similar, because what this is doing is it's bouncing up and down on top of the key pins, and the force of this bouncing on the key pin is transferred through to the driver pin underneath, which is then depressing down onto the spring. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get all of the key pins to be bounced down at the same time and create a gap or your own shear line between the bottom of the key pins and the driver pins. So what you're doing is you're vibrating the top of the key pins many times a second, and you're hoping then that you're actually going to get create a shear line with using the tool that you can then exploit to turn and get the lock open. So that's very dependent on the force transferring from the needle through the pins. And so if you can imagine, if you have this at an angle like this in the lock, you're going to be putting more force on the front pins than you are on the back. And then if you angle it the other way, the back pins will be vibrated and the front pins won't. So basically, try and keep the tool, or at least start with the tool level, so that you're getting an equal amount of vibration and force transference on the key pins across all of the key pins in the lock. If you find that's not getting the lock, you can sometimes use like a soaring seesaw motion up and down, and that will then create a whole load of different shear lines within the lock for you to maybe exploit and get the lock open. One thing you must be aware of with this tool is that very basic locks will go pretty quickly, because they don't have any preventative measures with the against using a pick gun. But locks like 1-star locks and 3-star locks certainly do have various methods within them. They have timing springs, for example, that will the pins will basically operate at different times and not create the shear line. There may be some physical blocks in the actual key pin chambers, so that the blade doesn't actually make contact with the top of the on the top of the key pin. And also you may have a zero lift inside the inside your cylinder, and a zero lift, every time you hit it, it's going to transfer the force through and potentially also push the key pin down a little bit and not get the lock open. So this is not the answer to opening all locks. It certainly exploits the easier locks. Some of the harder locks will eventually go if you keep trying, maybe sawing action, up and down action. But what you must remember is that you can't fully rely upon this as a lock opening tool. There are other methods that you may have to resort to if this fails. One thing that I find is I can use this on a lot of one-star locks or a lot of locks with security pins, and although it won't open the lock, it'll open the lock or put the lock into a full set scenario, and a full set can then be exploited with a pick to get the open on the lock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this and open a series of locks just to finish the video, and you can see what there is involved in using the tool.